understand what's in your mailbox that's at your house while you're at work. So going through a Wi-Fi connection, connecting to an email account makes it possible to do that with several devices. So I already have my email account set up here. Oh, there's my battery life, it's about to die. Luckily we're presenting now. But I got a message that says mail was left in my mailbox, and if you see here, I'll try to present this as best I can. I received a letter inside or on my phone now, and you can clearly read what's inside the mailbox. We need to work on the lighting a little bit, but that's something that we would develop if we were to actually completely develop this product. Can't really see on the camera there, but that's fine. But I can assure you and promise you that it does say North Surrey High School with the address. So we'll go ahead, one more thing. Talking about the theft, 10,000 criminals are caught each year. So let's say I decide to steal this letter, it is outside the mailbox now, what happens next? So the mailbox is closed again, pretends like nothing happened. So it's going to do that 20-second window time again, and what's going to happen is I'm going to get the same image, the same message with a different image, and it's going to show an empty mailbox. So basically how that works is it's just following the same program, just sending you a different message, a different picture. That way you know, oh, there was a letter in there, I didn't touch the mailbox. You can call your family members to make sure they didn't touch the mailbox. And then you can contact the authorities maybe to figure out who stole your mail, if it was something very important. Or if it was just something that could be easily replaced, you can contact whatever the letter is from because you know exactly where the return address is or who sent it to you. You can contact them and say, hey, I'd like to get this replaced, somebody stole my mail. And you have proof of that as well because it's on your cell phone. You have a JPEG image file of that. So now that we've gone through the actual design itself, we're going to go ahead and take you through the process, or the actual final design we have here, take you through the process of what it actually is. So Carly's going to go ahead and talk about the casing.
Okay, so we have two cases. This was the first case that we had built because at the beginning we didn't really know how big our Raspberry Pi was going to be. So when our Raspberry Pi came in, we saw that it was really, really small. So we had to go in on Autodesk Inventor and recreate our design. So we went with this design. The reason why we went with the lid is because there's a lot of wires with this product, and we didn't want the mailman putting the mail in there and then jerking out the wires.
All right, and so after this, with the design itself, the main computing part of the system is actually the Raspberry Pi computer module. We have another sample here as well. Raspberry Pi is just like a cute name they give electronics, so like people that will actually be interested in using electronics or programming software design. So this is a bigger version, an older model. This is the Raspberry Pi Model 3. Basically, these were developed for college students who couldn't afford computers, so they'd buy this and build their own computer. Now they're used in the education system for anybody like me or these few people here who would like to develop some sort of device that they can use with their mailbox or any other device they want to create. With ours, we decided to go with a smaller design, which is the Raspberry Pi Zero, which has a wireless connection, allowing us to connect through a Gmail server and send it to a certain device that we'd like it to pair to, allowing us to have a little bit of modularity with the device itself. We were introduced to this, the Raspberry Pi itself, from our mentor. If you don't know what a mentor is yet, basically we were assigned a professional in some sort of field that partook in what we were developing. Our mentor was Graham Stewart, who's actually with us today. Graham Stewart came all the way from Colorado. He's originally from Scotland. Went to school here in the United States. Oh, sorry, outside of Scotland. Eventually he came here. And now he works for Nestor Hosiery, and does a lot of programming for them, assembly line technology and stuff like that for them. And we were introduced to the Raspberry Pi programming process through him. We decided to follow Python programming. We had to completely learn how the Python programming process. He pointed us in the right direction, which is very thoughtful of him as our mentor, and able to program a process through there. So next is the ultrasonic sensor.
So right here we have the ultrasonic sensor, and as you can see, it has two speakers and a microphone, but you cannot see the microphone. We cannot hear it because it has such a high frequency. So when it runs through, it will recognize, the Raspberry Pi will recognize it because it has the same frequency.
The next thing we put into our project was the LED light. I do not know if y'all can see this, probably not, it's really small. And so we chose this light because it runs off a really low amount of voltage, but it shines a very bright light off. It's actually the same kind of light you would see in a car headlight.
Next, we have the actual camera module itself, which was one of the main flaws with the competing products. You can see it right here in the small corner. There we go, yeah. So it's very small. Obviously, we don't want it to be very visible because we don't want it to look like an electronic device that you could steal and sell to other people sitting in your mailbox. So the camera itself obviously solves the issue of knowing exactly what is in your mailbox, which other competing designs could not solve.
The last thing we put into our project was a rechargeable battery. We decided to do this because a lot of the products that we looked at, the issue was it would not have a long-lasting lifespan, or that they did not know what to do with it after it went dead. So we decided to put the rechargeable battery in, and it was also very small, so it would fit into our compact design.
We had a total of 80 days to complete this design, and we had a budget of $200 for this product.
So adding on to that, the actual project itself costed roughly $140. This is including everything we purchased, including this mailbox here and the stand that we made, to actually develop our project. We were able to develop our final design, the black case that you see there with all the electronics inside of it. We were able to develop that a little bit over $60. Now, if we were to actually produce this product in the future with an actual company or process or service or something like that, we would hope to bring that price down by using different plastic developing products, developing the case out of something besides a 3D printed design off the computer 3D printer that we have at school, building out something that would be more fast-paced, a little bit easier to make and mass-produce, as well as instead of using the Raspberry Pi, since the Raspberry Pi is very modular, it's used for several things, but that makes it slightly more expensive than other circuits you can purchase. So we would probably take the next step of actually developing a small circuit ourselves, getting somebody to design it and program it for us based off the programming we have. That way it does the exact process of what we want it to do, making it cheaper, making it use less battery life, since it has to follow smaller processes. Hopefully bring the price down to roughly $40 rather than that $60 price range.
Before we conclude, we would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We would like to thank Mr. Stupfin for always supporting us through everything that we do. We would like to thank our mentor, Graham Stewart, for always being in touch with us when we needed him. And we would like to thank Ms. Badgett for allowing us to have our presentation tonight.
So in the first class of Project Lead the Way, the last project is you are paired with a different partner and you're not able to see them or talk to them face to face. So they took this process from 3 years ago and put it into real life scenarios during this project with talking to Graham Stewart in Colorado about once a week, correct? So that right there is a task in itself. If you have to schedule all of these different meetings and you're not going face to face, so I applaud them for that. The next group is the Wake Talk group. This was a sporting group. They decided to make a device that they will use out on the lake, and they used out on the lake. And without further ado, the Wake Talk group.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I'll play this song. Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name's China Brunel.
My name is Ethan Shoemake. I'm Calvin Johnson.
We are the Wake Talk group. So over the course of about 80 days, we went through a 12-step design process that has overall allowed us to create a product that is efficient, and we had design matrices that allowed us to stay on task, and we made our design and it was efficient, and it meets its full potential. So the first step of the design process is to define a problem. The problem that we're trying to solve is the fact that whenever you go out onto the lake with your friends or go with your family or something, a lot of people like to do water sports like wakeboarding. A lot of times it's hard to communicate with the boat driver if you want to speed up or slow down, and it's just hard to communicate back and forth. The boat driver, it's hard to see you if you want to speed up or slow down. So we wanted to make it easier to communicate communicate. And also, if the rider was to fall off of the wakeboard, we wanted to make it easier for the boat driver to be notified whenever the rider has fallen off so that they can turn around and go get them. You're just not sitting there in the water.
So the second step in the design process is brainstorming. And we come into this knowing pretty much we was going to have 2 different devices that communicated with one another. And so our brainstorming phase consisted of us coming up with different things that we could put into this design and how it was going to look. And we came up with a couple different ideas, and some of them are drew up on here. At first we thought about incorporating it into the handle. Then we thought over this, and we thought it wouldn't be that great of an idea because it'd be tough to get all the electronics to fit into that handle. We talked with Brandon Palmer, our mentor, he's here tonight, a little bit, and he gave us a couple ideas of how to waterproof it and different things that we were going to need to incorporate.
So the third step, the design process that we followed throughout the semester is to research and generate ideas. So when we went into this step, what we decided to do is poll 400 people on just various survey questions that regard our product. So we polled people on if they thought communication between a rider and a boat driver was important, would they be willing to pay for a device that improved this communication, and if they felt safety was a concern as far as communication, like if good communication made water sports more safe. With our surveys of 400 people, 60% said that they would buy a product for around $60 that would improve communication between a boat driver and a rider. Nearly 97% said that they thought that communication between the rider and the driver was important.
So the fourth step in the design process is identify criteria and constraints. And a couple of different constraints we had to incorporate with our design is waterproofing. Definitely with all the electronics we have, you don't want to get that wet. And then we had to, it needed to be battery powered, it needed to be wireless because it's going to be out in the water. You can't run wires to it, obviously. And another thing we need to do is have a good distance that it can communicate over, because the wakeboard rider is not going to be on the boat, so it needs about a distance of 30 yards. And it needs to be small and compact so it can fit, and you wouldn't have to reach far to click all the buttons that we need to put on there. And we had 80 days and a $200 budget to complete this project.
The fifth step of the design process is to explore possibilities. There were many possibilities that we initially wanted to incorporate into our final design, but due to budget and other issues, there's some of the ideas that we could not incorporate. One of the first things that we wanted to do was, like Calvin mentioned, we was going to make the transmitter into the ski handle, but we also had other ideas to make it to where it was detachable so that a rider that was more advanced, someone who's not novice, that like their own ski ropes, would be able to use this device and not have to buy a new rope just to use the device. Another possibility that we wanted to initially incorporate was this safety clip. The safety clip, initially it was plugged into the transmitter right here. And it's kind of like if you're on a treadmill. You have a clip that attaches to your shirt to where if it pulls out, the treadmill will stop. This is kind of the idea we was going for. It had a cord that attached to this little hook right here that went to your bathing suit or wetsuit. Kind of like how a clothespin attaches to something, to where if it was pulled out, it would send off a buzzer at the front of the boat that allowed the driver to know that the rider is falling off so that you can go back and get them. It's not a safety hazard. You just don't have to be sitting there in the water waiting for them to realize that you've fallen off the boat. Another possibility that we were going to incorporate was our mentor, Brandon Palmer. He helped us with a lot of the mechanical aspects of our product, and he could have actually designed the clip and the transmitter out of metal, or we could have made it out of computer-aided design, which is a 3D printer. It prints it out of plastic, so we had many possibilities that we could have chosen either way to go.
Just to expand on that a little bit, our design consists of a receiver and a transmitter. The transmitter would mount to a ski rope that you would hold on to while wakeboarding or skiing or kneeboarding, while the receiver sits inside the boat and receives the communication. So what John was referring to is this mounts to the ski rope handle. But the next step in the design process is to select an approach. So this is the point where we have to take all of our ideas and actually decide on what we want to do. We did decide that we wanted to make it out of plastic for several reasons. One reason being that if there's something mounted to a ski rope and you happen to fall while you're riding, you don't want to hit your head on something metal because that would hurt. So we did go out of plastic for that. We had several different types of wireless communication that we could possibly use. Of those, it was Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or a 2.4 gigahertz arbitrary radio communication. That sounds a little complicated, but it's not. So Wi-Fi, there's a few problems with it. It has a lot of problems with interference. So there's Wi-Fi all around. Every single smartphone in your pocket is producing some type of Wi-Fi signal. So if you go off that same signal, then you're going to get interference. Bluetooth is kind of the same story, and also Bluetooth isn't really rated at large range. And also, both of those protocols are meant for smarter devices. They're meant for smartphones. They have a lot of overhead. The type of chips that we're using in our design are very simplistic. So if we wanted to run Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, it would use up a lot of our processing power. So that's why we decided to go for the arbitrary 2.4 gigahertz radio signal, and we decided to go out of plastic.
Okay, the seventh step is to develop a design proposal, and just adding on to what Ethan said, since we went with the arbitrary way instead of the Bluetooth or the Wi-Fi, we made a Google Doc, and we had to put every single item that we wanted to order, because we had to order a bunch of parts for this to work. It doesn't look that big, but it actually has a lot of components. We spent about $180 on this whole product right here. So we made a Google Doc, and we had, I think it was about 50 different components that we had to buy and add into this. And actually, some of the stuff that we ordered actually did take a while to come in. So that set us back a little bit, but we got everything working, and we got everything tested out. We went to the lake, and everything worked out pretty good.
So the next step in the design process is to make a prototype. So we had a lot of different things going on in our project, and we didn't want to just jump right into that and try to develop the whole project, not knowing if any one part of it would work. So we had to develop a prototype for each section that we wanted to work. One of those was the circuits. If we couldn't get wireless communication to work between two circuits, then the project was never going to work from the beginning. So during the prototyping phase, we prototyped electronic circuits on these. These are called breadboards. The term breadboard comes from electricians in the past to prototype circuits very quickly. They actually use like breadboards like you cut your bread on at home, and they would put screws into those boards and wrap wires around them and allow them to move components around in their circuit faster. So nowadays, these are breadboards. They just allow you to prototype electronics a little bit faster than normal. We had to prototype the mechanical aspect. So we had to make a clip that could pressure mount into a slot, and it would be able to pull out on its own without jerking a rider down the lathe. And we had to make sure that this would mount to a ski rope. So we made small prototypes of each one of these things in different pieces before we tried to put them all into one product.
So the next step in the design process is to test and evaluate your design. Before we actually took this out in the water, we wanted to run a couple tests to make sure that some of the components functioned properly. So one of the first tests we did was the distance test, and we took China steel on one end of the hallway and Ethan steel on the other, and we measured the distance that the radios would communicate with one another, and we got a distance of about 100 meters, which is beyond what we needed. And then after that, we did the waterproofing test. At first, we thought we was going to go with an idea of using hot glue, a bead of hot glue around the edges of the two-piece transmitter that we have, and as soon as we put the hot glue onto the transmitter, it's immediately started to melt in the plastic, so we decided that's a no-go for that. And then our mentor, Brandon Palmer, and Mr. Suffolk gave us the idea of using silicone to seal off the design. So we printed out a simple box, a two-piece box, and we took a silicone and we sealed the edges, and we put a napkin on the inside, and we did submerge it in water for about 30 seconds, and we found out that this worked successfully and that this would waterproof our design. So then we used this on our transmitter, and we took it out in the lake one Saturday a couple weekends ago, and we figured out that the product functioned for the purpose that it needed to, and that it communicated between the wakeboard rider and the boat driver.
The 10th step is to refine the design. There are a lot of refinements that we had to add to our design. One of the first things that we had to change was this transmitter right here has two pieces. It's got the lid and it's got the bottom piece. So the first time that we had to print that with the 3D printer, this was our first model, and it was a little bigger. Well, actually, this one was our first model, and it was a little bigger than we wanted. We didn't want a knobby piece sitting on your ski rope because it's inconvenient. You didn't want it in your way. The second one we made was this one, and it was a little too small for all of our components to fit into the whole piece. And then the third one that we made was the one that we actually went with, and it actually could be a little smaller, but it works for the purpose that it serves, and it fits all of its components inside of there. Adding on to what Calvin said, another refinement that we had to make was we was initially going to use the bead of hot glue, but we decided to go with silicone to make sure that it would be completely waterproof, because if water was to get in there, then it would ruin all the electronics.
And just by the way, I want to point out, this board that's hanging on the outside, we'll get to that later, that's not really part of our project. So the 11th step in the design process is to actually make a solution. So this is the big step where everything has to come together. We are actually going to do a demonstration, and while we get this set up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the electronics of the project, because that was mostly what this project was electronics. That in there.
And this is the piece that goes with the
So
boat.
just a few days ago, the battery that we have powering our transmitter happened to die. It's the same type of battery that's in your smartphone. It's a lithium ion. When those die, they can be dangerous and stuff, so we didn't want to touch it. So we are having to plug in our transmitter right now to an outlet. Normally you wouldn't have to do that, but... Okay, hold on one second. There we go. So each one of these buttons would correspond to a different signal that you want to give to the driver. So one being speed up, slow down, another one being maybe start, stop. But I want to talk a little bit about the circuit that's going on inside. You can play with that if you want to. But both of these circuits are using what's called microcontrollers. Now, a microcontroller is very similar to a computer, but whereas a computer may run about 600 processes at one time, a microcontroller runs one. It's a very simplistic electronics component that you do have to write a program for, that we did. We wrote a program for both the receiver and transmitter, and as soon as you give power to a microcontroller, it starts to run that program and it just keeps on looping it. So we have the microcontrollers in both ones. We have LEDs for the lights and signals. We have the 2.4 gigahertz radios, and that's the majority of the components, but we also have things like lithium-ion batteries and voltage regulators on the inside for various reasons. Yeah, so the button on the left, we planned on being to speed up. And also we want to make this design so that you wouldn't have to take your hand off of the ski rope. While most advanced riders can do that on wakeboards and kneeboards, for some beginner riders, that's a very difficult thing to do. So to give a hand signal, which is normally what you do when you want to speed up or slow down, you have to take one hand off. So with this, you can do it with either thumb. You can press a button, and it would light up one LED demonstrating to the driver that you want to speed up or slow down.
Another thing, adding on to what I said earlier, the reason it looks like this is just because we wanted to make it to where you can transport it onto a different ski rope. So this is what this piece is for. You get your ski rope like this, and you just attach it onto like that, and you use 2 screws so you can transport it onto any ski rope, and it doesn't have to stay just on the one that it comes on.
So the 12th and final step in the design process is communicate processes and results. And we figured out this is a very complex project that we decided to do, having to do with all the electronics on the inside and the waterproofing and everything that has to do with that. This product costs about $180 to make, like China said earlier. And if we took this into mass production and wholesale, we could get this price down to about $30 per build, because each microcontroller would cost about 30 cents a piece, and we could sell this for about $50 retail. And Ethan's going to elaborate a little bit on why it would be cheaper.
Yeah, so the microcontrollers that we're using actually come on development boards. So the specific microcontroller that we're using is called the Atmel 328P. That's a very popular microcontroller because it's on one of the most popular development boards. Now what a development board is it's just a board that's made around a microcontroller that allows you to very easily program the microcontroller and allows you to very easily connect things to the microcontroller. But if you want to mass manufacture a product, there's no need for a development board. There's no need for all the extra functions. Whereas development boards may cost $30, the microcontroller itself that's actually running everything may cost 50 cents. And in both of these instances, we are using full development boards, and that's why our cost is so high at about $180. But if we was to take this a step farther and we was to get wholesale, so to get cheaper prices, and we cut out the development boards that aren't really necessary, we believe we could get this product down to about $30 in build cost and market it around $50 for wakeboard riders.
This concludes our presentation. We'd like to thank you all for coming out, and we'd like to thank Mr. Brandon Palmer for guiding us and keeping us on track. And thank you to Mr. Suffin for helping us and teaching us what it's like to be real world engineers. And thank you to the school board for funding this project. And y'all have a great night.
So the only bad thing about that presentation was I did not get to go with them to the lake the other day. Sounds like they had a lot of fun and learned a lot while they were there. The final group of the night is a different name. A Dunkin' Daddy is the name. This has been a great group. We have all got to eat cookies. We've all got to drink some milk. So I'm glad they decided to pursue this project. So without further ado, the Dunkin' Daddy.
We'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm Carson Jerome.
I'm Cameron Smith.
And we are the Dunkin' Daddies. To start off with a show of hands, how many of you guys have ever done cookies and milk before? Okay, and how many of you guys have ever had a problem with messy fingers or broken cookies, or your cookie falls off and gets lost in the milk? Yeah, about 100% of people who raise their hands ever had a problem with it.